What if I told you that a lot of the things that happened to you in school would be considered a crime today? Sounds like an exaggeration, I know. But what if I showed you that many of the jokes that made you laugh or cry alone in the bathroom were actually public humiliation in disguise? Things like pulling someone's pants down in the middle of the hallway, or pretending someone had a crush on you just to embarrass you in front of the entire class. Back in the 80s and 90s, all of that was seen as just part of growing up. They said it toughened you up. But what if all those so-called normal things actually left scars you still carry today, even if you don't realize it? This video is about 7 common school games that we lived through, laughed at, maybe even joined in. But now, with time and clarity, we can finally look at them for what they really were. Because behind the jokes, the nicknames, and the falls, there was pain. And if you stick with me, you might realize that what we once called just part of childhood was actually the beginning of something much deeper, something most people never had the courage to name out loud. Pantsing. If you went to school in the 90s, there's a good chance you saw this happen. Maybe you laughed. Maybe it happened to you. Or maybe you just froze, unsure if it was supposed to be funny or just plain wrong. I'm talking about that classic school prank, pulling someone's pants down in front of everyone. Yeah, pantsing. Here's how it usually went. A kid would sneak up behind someone, usually the shy one, the quiet one, or sometimes even the most popular, and in one quick motion, yank their pants down. The reaction was instant. Laughter filled the room, the hallway, the gym, and the poor kid stood there, underwear exposed, face burning. Some laughed it off. Others fought back tears. But the scariest part? It was treated like nothing more than a joke. Back then, no one called it public humiliation. We didn't even use the word bullying the way we do now. Teachers often looked the other way. And the rest of us? We laughed. Because the culture taught us one thing. If you didn't laugh, you might be next. But think about it. Really think. What did that joke do to the kid it happened to? How many people still carry that exact moment as a silent scar? A memory that seemed small, but shook their self-esteem, their sense of safety, even their desire to show up at school the next day. Today, pantsing is seen for what it really is, forced exposure, an attack on someone's dignity, a 2-second laugh that lives in someone's mind for decades. And maybe right now, you're remembering the time you saw it happen. Or worse, when it happened to you. Because even though no one talked about it back then, let's be honest, it was never funny. Not really. We just didn't have the words or the permission to say it out loud. So what about you? Did you see it happen at your school? Were you the one it happened to? Or maybe you did it to someone without realizing how heavy it actually was? The truth is, a lot of what we called normal in the 90s, now we know better. And this is just the beginning. Roast circles or the dozens. If you went to school in the 90s, especially in the US, you probably remember a very specific moment when a group of kids would gather in a circle and the roasting would begin. It was the classic roast circle, or as many knew it back then, playing the dozens. A kind of verbal showdown where everyone took turns throwing jokes, insults, and digs at each other. And the harsher the punchline, the louder the laughter. It was like an unofficial school sport. No ball, no scoreboard, just a crowd watching, waiting for the next hit, like a tournament with no rules. And the winner was whoever could drop the most savage line without stumbling. If you couldn't keep up, you became the target. And if you got mad, you lost. And the topics? Nothing was off limits. Looks, clothes, weight, poverty, family problems, bad grades. No one was safe. It was only a matter of time before you were in the middle of the circle. Some walked in laughing. Others walked out carrying something invisible on their backs. Shame, insecurity, that deep feeling of not belonging. Back then, no one called it bullying. If someone complained, the answer was always the same. Can't take a joke? Or worse, you're crying over words? But those words stuck, and they hurt. A lot of adults today remember those circles with a strange mix of nostalgia and discomfort. Some say, it was fun, just part of school. But if you really ask them, you'll find out that it hurt more people than we ever talked about. Today, schools are finally starting to shut that culture down because people are realizing that roasting someone, even when everyone's laughing, isn't a game. It's humiliation. It's public. And sometimes it's just cruel. Chair pulling. This was one of those pranks that came out of nowhere, no warning, no setup, and yet somehow almost every 90s school had it. You probably saw it happen, or maybe it happened to you. The scene was always the same. A student walks over, grabs their chair, starts to sit down, and right as their weight shifts, someone pulls the chair out from behind. Then comes the fall. The whole class bursts into laughter. The sound of the crash echoes through the room. The teacher turns around in shock. And there's the target sitting on the floor, face red, trying to laugh it off, to hide the pain, both physical and emotional. In the 90s, this was just another school joke. Some kids even competed to see who could pull it off the best. The bold ones did it to the class bully. Others went after the quiet kids, the easy targets. And nobody questioned it. In fact, it felt like a rite of passage. If you never fell, did you even go to school? But here's what people didn't say out loud, or didn't want to admit. The back pain, the spilled backpack, the scattered notebooks, and more than anything, the humiliation. Because no matter how funny it seemed, falling in front of the whole class left a mark. It gave you a nickname. It turned into a story kids told for years. Today, we call it what it really is, a dangerous prank. A form of physical aggression. Yes, aggression. Because a lot of students actually got hurt. They hit their heads. They twisted their wrists. Some ended up in the nurse's office, or even the hospital. All for a quick laugh. And yet, back then, the response was always the same. Relax, it was just a joke. But now, with the clarity we didn't have as kids, we can finally see it for what it was. That simple joke showed how easy it was to turn someone else's pain into entertainment. If you remember this, you probably remember someone who fell. Maybe it was you. Maybe you were the one who pulled the chair. And it's okay to admit that, because part of growing up is recognizing the things we normalized when we were too young to question them, and raising a world that never taught us how to. Dodgeball targeting. Dodgeball, the classic gym class game in every American school during the 80s and 90s, seemed like harmless fun at first. Two teams, balls flying across the court, kids yelling, sweating, laughing. It felt like freedom outside the classroom. But not for everyone. For a lot of kids, dodgeball wasn't a game. It was a battlefield. And worse, a public display of who was weak, slow, or just different. There was always that one kid, or a few, who became easy targets. Constant targets. Group targets. Maybe you remember it. The skinny kid with glasses who flinched every time the ball came near. The shy girl who stood frozen, silently hoping no one would call her name. The new student, the one who was terrible at sports, the one with a body that didn't fit the norm. The strategy was clear. The popular kids would lock eyes and go after them. One ball, then two, then three at once. No way to dodge, no chance to breathe. It was like a silent hunt, disguised as physical education. And the worst part, it was allowed, because it was just part of the game. Teachers watched. Some even encouraged it. Dodgeball was about reflexes, speed, competition, right? But what people ignored, or pretended not to see, was the cruelty hiding in plain sight. The quiet violence. The normalization of exclusion. The laughter when a kid took a ball to the face, tripped, or walked off in tears. And what's even sadder, those kids walked back into the locker room feeling like they failed as people. Like they didn't even measure up in the easiest sport the school had to offer. Today, many schools in the U.S. have banned dodgeball. Not because the sport is bad, but because we finally realized what it really became. A weekly stage for public humiliation, repeated again and again, year after year. Cruel nicknames that never went away. If you went to school in the 80s or 90s, you know this one by heart. All it took was one moment, a small mistake, a clumsy move, or just something you said, and boom, you walked out of school that day with a nickname that stuck for life. And it was never a sweet nickname. It was cruel. And worse, it became your new identity. Maybe it was because of your hair, or your weight, or the clothes you wore. Maybe you tripped in front of the class, said something awkward, or just laughed in a weird way. Sometimes it was as simple as having braces, or being the last one to finish a test. It didn't matter why. All it took was one loudmouth in class, and that name stuck. Blubber, four eyes, Stinky, Pizza Face, Snail, Nerdzilla, Lunchbox, Turtle Boy. The list was endless. And the worst part? No one took it seriously. Not your classmates. Not the teachers. Not even your parents. It was just teasing. Everybody gets a nickname. It's part of growing up. But it wasn't. Not like that. Because the nickname wasn't just said once. It was shouted across the hallway. Written in your notebook. Taped to your back. Used during roll call. And the more you showed it bothered you, the stronger it got. It was like your real name disappeared. A lot of adults today, maybe even you, still remember those names. And honestly, some of them hurt more than bad grades or lost friendships. Because a nickname might sound harmless, but when it's loaded with judgment, cruelty, and public shame, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a brand. And the saddest part? Sometimes the victim would end up laughing along, pretending it didn't sting, just to survive. Now, we finally understand the weight of all that. We understand that it wasn't just a funny name. It was a way to shrink people down, to lock someone into a label they never asked for and couldn't escape. Maybe you remember someone who had one of those nicknames. Or maybe you remember yours. Maybe you've told yourself it was just a phase. But deep down, you know it never really left. Passing fake love notes. Love notes. If you went to school in the 80s or 90s, you definitely saw or got involved in this classic school ritual. Notes folded into weird shapes, passed from desk to desk, with arrows and little messages like read after class or don't let the teacher see. Sometimes they were real. Other times they were a trap. That's how the fake love note prank began. A group of students would pick a target, usually someone shy, quiet, or just different. They'd write a fake note pretending to be from a girl or a boy with a crush. Something like, I think you're cute. Want to meet behind the gym after school? Or, I've liked you for a while. Please don't tell anyone. The note made its way across the room until it landed in the hands of the target. And there it was, hope, right on the page. Sometimes their eyes lit up. Other times they'd blush and hide shy smile. That tiny spark of maybe, just maybe, someone finally saw them. That moment of hope that only a lonely kid truly understands. And then came the punch. It was all fake. Planned. Watched from a distance just for the laughs. Sometimes the group couldn't even wait until class ended. They'd start giggling right away, pointing, whispering. And the kid who believed became the joke of the day, or the week, or the year. Back then, people would say, oh, come on, it's just a dumb prank. Everyone's fallen for one. But the truth? It hurt. A lot. Because it wasn't just a fake note. It was a betrayal. A shot straight to the self-esteem. It turned what could have been a beautiful moment into a painful memory no one ever forgot. And the worst part? It usually happened to the kids with the fewest defenses. The ones already feeling left out. The ones going through hard stuff at home. And for a moment, in that note, they saw a bit of light. And that light was crushed. Now we know. It wasn't funny. It was cruelty. It was messing with real feelings just for fun. Lunchroom isolation. If there was ever a place in school that should have felt relaxed, it was the lunchroom. After hours of class, lunch was supposed to be that little break, a chance to laugh, talk, and just feel like you belonged. But for a lot of kids in the 80s and 90s, the cafeteria was the opposite. It was the place where loneliness took shape in plain sight. Lunchroom exclusion didn't have to be loud. It was quiet but brutal. Sometimes all it took was one person switching tables. Other times, the whole group would stand up and walk away when someone sat down. And suddenly, you'd be sitting there, tray in hand, while everyone else laughed, joked, and carried on like you didn't exist. You'd pretend it didn't bother you. Pretend it didn't hurt. Back then, schools didn't have words for this. No one talked about emotional health or empathy. If someone always ate alone, the excuse was simple. They're weird. They don't know how to fit in. The problem was never the group, always the kid. But it was a problem, because the lunchroom showed, loud and clear, who was in and who was out. It was like a social stage where the pecking order was obvious. And for the kids who were left out, every bite was a reminder that they didn't belong, that no one wanted them there, that maybe it didn't matter. Some were excluded for the simplest reasons. Wore different clothes. Didn't laugh at the same jokes. Talked too little. That was enough to get pushed aside. Every day, week after week. And when you grow up feeling excluded like that, it doesn't just fade. It shapes how you see friendships, how you trust people, even how you see your own worth. Today we understand that was social bullying. Invisible, but real, and maybe more damaging than a joke or a shove. Because it was silence that hurt the most. The avoidance, the looks that turn away, the constant, wordless no repeated every single day. If this ever happened to you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you saw it happen to someone else, you might still carry the guilt of staying quiet. That cafeteria, it seemed like just another place. But for a lot of us, it was the stage for one of the hardest feelings a kid can carry. The feeling of not being wanted. And now that you've remembered all of this, maybe you're feeling what so many others feel when they look back. A strange mix of nostalgia, shame, anger, and above all, clarity. Back then, we thought all of this was normal. Just part of school. Just another day between tests, hallway noise, and recess laughs. But today, with time and perspective, we see the truth. These jokes left scars, sometimes quiet ones, that followed us into adulthood. If any of this hit home for you, if it brought back memories or stirred something inside, share this video with someone you used to go to school with. Because trust me, they remember too. And if you want to keep uncovering the stories school never taught us, but that we never forgot, hit subscribe. Because in the next videos, we're going even deeper into the childhood truths no one ever dared to talk about.